ممكن أقوم أشير إلى التلفاز لما أتكلم pointer. So I have the wire.
Yep. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد النبي الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا ساميا معصوما. اللهم لا تجعل فينا شقيا ولا محروما ولا مطرودا ولا معذبا بنار برحمتك يا عزيز يا غفار. My dear brothers and sisters, this topic is very important and sensitive, and especially when it comes around certain days, you will find Muslims debate around the moon sighting, and actually I called it moon fighting, as sometimes the conversation gets heated and start people throwing things here and there. This is one of the matters that the fiqh addressed. Scholars in the past and even the present time, they talk about it. And Islam is there to ease the practice for people. And we are not in the position to make it easier or harder. And we are in the position to find what is close to haqq. Because none of us will have a green card that will say, oh, whatever I decide is haqq and truth. We're all seeking haqq. We are all seeking truth. And we are trying the maximum our best, the best of our effort. We're trying all of that with the light of the Quran and the Sunnah. And alhamdulillah, we are at London Council of Imams. We have looked at all of the different school of thought and opinions and all options. And alhamdulillah, we reach the agreement with all members for the method that we are going to present today. So despite the different methods how you determine the beginning of the month, and we're going to talk about it, as a conclusion, we reach an agreement. And that's first the most important part. As we are required to bring in unity. So if you couldn't unite people on one opinion in the whole region, in the entire nation, at least in the local Muslim community, that's something that we can achieve. And alhamdulillah, we are working toward that. The criteria that we presented, that actually we're hoping that will be adapted criteria that bridge the gap between those that only consider the actual moon sighting and those that are considering calculations. So that comes to bridge a gap, which is not something new. No, it's not something, but it's something being kind of modified to bring certainty and avoid the gray area, and at the same time that something being backed and supported by evidence of the scholars. So we're not coming up with something like a new. No, we are actually selecting from what already existed. For your information, there are two global conference for scholars was dedicated only to discuss the Islamic months beginning. And both was organized by Turkey. And in both, that is well attended by scholars from all over and all different backgrounds and schools, and all reached a concept and the agreement that the calculation is not only valid, but it's a recommended method that they will follow. However, calculation itself is not going to bring unity, because it's still even that how you determine and based on what and what's your angle, what's the condition that comes with that calculation. We all know the hadith that Rasulullah, he said, صوموا لرؤيتي وافطروا لرؤيتي. For example, related to Ramadan, that you should observe your fasting according to sightseeing and the moon sighting, and you conclude your fasting according to that. So you go by this. صوموا لرؤيتي وافطروا لرؤيته فإن غم عليكم. So when it's become, for example, cloudy, or you missed calculation, or you couldn't really figure what is the day, then you complete the period of 30. As you know, the lunar month in most of the months are 29 days. Those are 30 days are few. And even to have like a 30 days back to back, it's almost impossible. So most of the months are 29, and sometimes at 30 days. Where that's how the differences comes. In total, there are around 11 days differences between the solar year and the lunar one. And we're not here to bring the evidence for all school of thought, but to tell you that be assured that even the calculation, that's not something was presented on the table just for the last century. It's been in the discussion and debate with the scholars for over 700 years. During my Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Hajar, or other Imams, they spoke about that. Some people think, that's something being newly developed because of, Muslims seeking the easiness. No, it was there for long. But doesn't mean that, the Ummah adapted that. No, the part of the Ummah, maybe, but majority they are, looking at this. Nowadays, it's very rare to find somebody not accepting to the term Salah according to calculation. Actually, everybody goes by that. None of us will go to check Zawal time or the Shafaq to know Dhuhr or Isha and all of that. All they go by calculation. But those calculation is based on how the fiqh determined the beginning of the Salah. So this is the criteria. So it's not just calculation from nowhere. No, it's based on the rules. And if you look at it, Salah is more important even fasting or other things. It was vast majority they are okay with the calculation to determine the Salah, let alone talking about other ibadah. Do not understand that, I'm in favor of calculation, or I'm in favor of the moon sighting. This is not the point. First, what to achieve, what valid, that's first, has to be valid opinion. Second, has to bring in unity, even if was not the strongest among all. And that actually was the teaching of Prophet ﷺ. In fiqh, we call it rajih, marjuh. Their opinion, it might be the strongest based on the evidence. Other, it's valid, but it's not the strongest compared with that one. But if all ummah agreed, all jama'ah agreed to follow the second one, even if not the strongest, that was what we should go by. As many evidence, toward that from the fiqh. Yes, so as long as it's valid and bringing unity, that is something important. At the end of the day, when you made your possible way and your ijtihad in a matter that of ijtihad means a matter of opinion. It's not like a fixed text where there's no interpretation or difference isn't there. So matter of ijtihad, you did your best, you follow the rules, even it was not valid, you don't have to worry about your act of worship. You don't have to worry about your ibadah. All scholars reached the agreement, if the people of Arafah, they are in Arafah, and they missed the calculation or they determined the beginning of the month not that accurate. For example, it was cloudy in the beginning of the month in there, so they said, you know what, let's complete the month 30 days and then they begin the following days. In other areas, they could see the moon. They could see the crescent of the first day. So now, what they determine will happen, be count as a day of Arafah, is different from others. And for sure, according to others, their Arafah is wrong. But all scholars agreed, if they stood in Arafah, thinking and that it is Arafah, its count for them is Arafah, and their Hajj is correct. Do you understand what I'm saying? Their Hajj is correct. Even that for sure, according to other people in the other locality, they determined differently because of, was a clear sky, so a clear horizon, so they can see. My dear brothers and sisters, we should really trust our imams and our scholars that are trying their best. We are not here to dictate, we are here to educate. We are not here to only saying this is the truth. No. This is the best of our ability, looking at different angles. The fiqh aspect, the practical aspect, and the situation of the ummah. And as we don't have a marji'iyya reference or one body that could take care of this part, so then we have to jump in. In a back home, none of the imams or even scholars, they will determine that. That comes from the Grand Mufti, comes from the Ministry of Justice, Wizarat al-Adil. They come from a special people that their job to determine those, fatwa and talk about the beginning of the month, for example. I was an imam there for 20 years. I never even, goes into that area, of determining the beginning of the month. But here, we have to, as way to help the community being in a situation to choose for themselves, where that's now our obligation to bring what is the best and could bring all community together. We want to feel that we're all at one body that's working in the circle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not leave the room for shaitan. The London Council of Imams, they have enough qualification to take care of this part. And we believe this method, as going, inshallah, it will be adapted method for all, and inshallah, that's something, it will be one of the hasanat jariyah bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's inshallah begin with the presentation of the chair of the London Council of Imams, Imam Abdul Fattah Tawakkul. May Allah bless him. Bismillah.
Jazakallah khairan, Imam Jamali. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. As Imam Jamali had mentioned, this is a very contentious and divisive topic. But our purpose and our goal and our aim is to be able to bring together as many groups, as many institutions, as many people as possible. And that's one of the reasons why we came up with this criterion. What I want to go through today in terms of the agenda is just to kind of give a very brief history of the issue, as Imam Jamali has already spoken about it, just to mention a few things and to expand a little bit about what the issue is about when we're talking about moon sighting versus calculations. Then we need to be able to understand some of the science behind the moon sighting and understand some of the different terminologies, the definitions of terms that are used that are relevant to the moon, the new moon, as well as moon sighting. And then we want to talk a little bit about the background of the practice here in London, Ontario from before. So before we came up with this criterion as the London Council of Imams, what did London follow, generally speaking? Then we can talk about the crux of the presentation today, which is the actual criterion that we've unanimously agreed upon. All current members of the London Council of Imams have unanimously agreed and accepted this criterion. And then I'll give you an example of how we apply this criterion. So once I explain what the criterion is, I'll give an example of how we actually put into application this criterion. And then if we have time, inshallah, we'll open up the floor for question and answer, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So to begin with, for many decades, the Muslim community has been debating this issue. Not just decades, as Imam Jamali mentions, actually for centuries, in terms of calculations versus the actual moon sighting. What's the core of the issue? There are many hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ that talk about when we begin the new months. And Sheikh Jamali mentioned one of them. This is in the Sahih of Imam Muslim as well as in Bukhari, that from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi, fa in ghummiya alaykum fa akmilu al-adad." So this is one narration where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, begin your fast, observe the fast upon sighting the moon. And so the sighting of the moon is what's the difference between when we're talking about the prayers and when we're talking about the moon sighting. This is something that is very specific that the Prophet ﷺ talked about. Now, my point is not to get into the debate. I don't want to open up and getting into it, because this is something, like I said, that has been debated, and you can hear all the different sides of the debate in other places. But this is not what the purpose of our presentation is today, but it's just to contextualize what we're talking about. And so then if the sky is cloudy, then complete the number of 30. In another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is actually the name of the chapter in Sahih Muslim, Babu wujubi sawmi Ramadan li ru'yatil hilal wal fitri li ru'yatil hilal wa annahu idha ghumma fi awwalihi aw akhirihi ukmilat iddatu shahri 30 yawma. That's literally the name of the chapter that Imam Muslim, he put these hadiths under. The chapter on the obligation to fast Ramadan when the crescent is sighted, and to break the fast when the crescent is sighted, and that if it is cloudy at the beginning or the end of the month, then the month should be completed as 30 days. Another hadith in the same chapter that is narrated from Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه ذكر رمضان فقال لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال ولا تفطروا حتى تروه فإن أغمي عليكم فاقدروا له. So the Prophet ﷺ narrated from Ibn Umar, he said, do not fast until you see the moon, and do not break the fast, meaning at the end of the month of Ramadan, until you see it. But if the weather is cloudy, calculate about it. فَقْدِرُوا لَهُ. So the scholars then, they differ with these words and these terms. What does it mean, فَقْدِرُوا لَهُ? What does it mean to approximate or to calculate, etc.? And so there's room for different understandings and interpretations, and that's where these debates come in terms of, well, can we just use the calculation solely and not even consider the moon sighting? Or do we have to consider the moon sighting because of these very clear, unequivocal hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ? And so how is it that you're able to sort of bridge between these two aspects? Because the debate nowadays is that many scholars and some fiqh councils will say, well, the point of this was when the new moon comes about, and we know that the new moon has come about from scientific knowledge, therefore that's the point. And that's based on calculation. And they don't take into consideration the possibility of actually sighting the moon. When people, they go by calculation strictly, without looking at the moon sighting of it whatsoever, this is why it's so debated. Whereas those who are preferring moon sighting, they say, no, you have to sight the moon. You have to physically go out, look at the sky at the proper time, and sight the moon. And only when you see the moon, then you're able to declare the beginning of the month, whether it's the fasting of Ramadan or Eid al-Fitr or otherwise. And so this is where these debates, they come in. And so this is something that we've seen increase nowadays, more so. And people will give different reasonings for it to say that, well, the Muslims, they are now more scientifically advanced, that they have more knowledge, which isn't necessarily true. Because some of these things, as the Imam mentioned, have been debated in the books of fiqh for centuries, literally. Because the Muslims had advanced knowledge when it came to the moon. They were able to calculate the conjunction of the moon, which I'll talk about in a minute, down to the nearest minute, within a minute or 30 seconds. They were able to know that, they have that knowledge, and they've had that knowledge for centuries. So what were the calculations used for? And then the scholars will differ in terms of, is it used for affirming that a moon sighting happened, or negating the possibility of it? And then there were differences in terms of how the calculations are used, and that's where they'll bring in these statements of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said, فَقْدِرُ لَهُ, that, then to calculate it, meaning make it 30 days, and move on, continue, right? So when it comes to the science behind the moon sighting, I'm going to actually have some diagrams here, so I'll just come to the screen here so that you can actually see, and I'll try to explain when it comes to the diagram here. The first and perhaps most important definition here is that of conjunction. Conjunction, in astronomical terms, is where you have an apparent meeting or passing of two or more celestial bodies. So in this case, when we're talking about the conjunction of the moon, you have the moon that is passing between the sun and the earth, and that they're in the same line, so to speak. So the moon is in conjunction with the sun at the phase of new moon. Now what does this mean? Here you have the sun, the rays of the sun are lighting up half of the moon. At any point in time throughout the month, half of the moon is always going to be lit. Now what do we see? Well, that depends on where the moon is in relative relation to the earth. Conjunction is when the entire side of the moon is lit that is exactly opposite of where the earth is. And so how much of the moon would we actually see at conjunction? None of it. You can't see the moon. It's because it's completely dark on this side. And so this is the point of conjunction, where the moon is passing in the same line, trajectory of the sun and the earth. And this is where you actually have eclipses taking place. When you have a solar eclipse, where the shadow of the moon comes onto the earth, that happens at the moment of conjunction. A solar eclipse happens at the moment of conjunction. So it's when it moves between the earth and the sun, and the side that is turned towards the earth is dark. You can't see anything. So that's conjunction. Now, a second definition that is very important, moon phase. When we're talking about the moon phases, as you know, the moon, it rotates around the earth. And that's what our months are based on Islamically, the lunar months, right? And so here's another diagram. You have the sun, the rays of the sun are here. When the moon is in this position, where it's between the earth and the sun, you can see that this half of the moon is lit. But the half that's facing towards the earth is completely dark. Why? Because this is the point of conjunction. What do we see? The new moon? Nothing. That's the point of conjunction. So then the moon, as it rotates around the earth, what's going to happen is the angle of elongation, which is our next definition, it changes. So it goes from 0 degrees up until a waxing crescent moon, and that's what we see here. That's when you look in the sky, you're going to see the moon like this. That's when the moon is in this position relative to the sun and the earth. Then when you get to the first quarter, right, we don't call this half moon. People will usually refer to it as half moon, but it's the first quarter moon. Why? Because it's 1/4 from going around the entire earth. It's 1/4 of its way, so it's 90 degrees. And so when we're looking at the moon from the earth, this is what we see in the sky. It looks like a half moon, but it's only 1/4 through the month. And then the moon continues to grow. And so waxing means that it's growing. Gibbous means that it's beyond this half moon, quote unquote. And so the gibbous means it's not quite full, but it's past the first quarter phase. Then when it gets to full moon, it means that the moon is on the other side of the earth. So when you look at the sun, the rays of the sun, it's on the other side of the earth. So the moon is at 180 degrees. You see the entire full moon. It's lit up. When does that happen? Halfway through the month. And then it continues to go rotate. But now, as it grew, once it gets to full moon and it continues, what's going to happen? It's going to shrink. The size of it is going to become smaller. That's what waning means. Waning. And then you get to the last quarter moon, and then you get to the waning crescent moon, and then it becomes the new moon. So these are the moon phases. And so how it appears from the earth, that's what we're talking about. These are the moon phases. New moon, waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, last quarter, waning crescent. Those are the moon phases. When we're talking about the angle of elongation, based on where the position of the moon is, and this is an illustration that is animated, where it's actually showing, okay, here the moon is rotating around the earth. Notice at all times, half of the moon is lit. But depending on the position of the moon and the earth and the sun, then you're going to see different amounts of the moon that are illuminated, and the angle is going to differ. And so when we're talking about new moon, the angle of elongation, 0 degrees, because it's exactly between the earth and the sun. Then when it gets to 90 degrees, as we mentioned, first quarter. Gets to full moon, 180. And then it continues to grow or become smaller, and that's based on the angle of elongation, and it's based on east and west. So how far east of the sun is the moon, and then once it gets to full moon, then it's looking at it from the perspective of west. And so that's why when the moon is near the sun at new moon, its elongation is 0 degrees. And when the moon is opposite at full moon here, it's at 180 degrees. But it's about how far east or west the moon is when we're looking at it in the sky in relation to the sun. That's elongation. Is this clear? I know it gets a bit technical, but these definitions are important, as you'll see when we go into our criterion. Now, the last definition is the altitude of the moon. How far is the moon when we're looking at it above the horizon? And so when the moon is right on the horizon, then the angle of altitude, the moon altitude, is 0 degrees. But then as the moon rises up in the sky, just like the sun goes up in the sky, so does the moon. And so the sun will have an angle of altitude, and so does the moon. So then based on where you are at in the horizon, it can be 0 degrees, or 30 degrees, or 45 degrees, or 60 degrees, or if it's right above your head, that's 90 degrees. That doesn't happen here where we are, but it's just so that a person has an understanding of when we're talking about the altitude of the moon, what it's referring to. It's a measurement of how high the moon appears in the sky that's expressed in degrees based on where a person is standing and relative to the moon in the horizon. 0 degrees, 30 degrees, 60 degrees. It can go anywhere in between that, right? But that's the idea of the altitude of the moon. So those are the 4 definitions that are extremely important for us when we're talking about the moon sighting. Now, how early can the moon be seen? There are different factors that will make a difference in terms of can I see the moon or not. So if I say if the moon is new moon and it's right on the horizon and it's not far from the sun, it's actually right at 0 degrees elongation, can I see the new moon? Is it possible at the point of conjunction? Yes or no? No, you can't see it. Impossible. Okay? What has to happen is the moon has to shift far enough away from the sun so that it forms a crescent, but at the same time it's far enough so that the brightness of the sun doesn't block the moon. I can't, because of the sun, it's so bright, the sun has to set and the moon has to move far enough from the sun, the angle of elongation, and the moon has to also be high enough in the horizon. Because if it's right at the horizon, when the moon is a few hours old, I won't be able to see it. It's too close to the sun. It's too bright. You won't be able to see it. So when we're looking at how many hours needs to pass before we can actually see the new moon, a very thin crescent after conjunction, which is the new moon, can be sighted as early as 15.5 hours. In other words, from the point of conjunction, where it's at 0 degrees, the new moon, it needs 15 hours so that I'll be able to see it with the naked eye. At least 15 hours. And this is based on the US Naval Observatory. It's generally easier to see the moon when it's 20 hours old. But anything less than 15, you can't see it with the naked eye. It's virtually impossible. So when we're talking about the unaided naked eye, and this is what we're referring to as naked eye, meaning I don't use any aids, any optical aids, no binoculars, no telescope, any instrument. I just look in the sky and I'd be able to see it. I need about 15 hours minimum in order for me to be able to see the moon. So a reliable sighting can be reported as early as 15.5 hours. With optical aids, then I can bring it down to 12 hours. So it's hard to see if it's less than 15 hours, but at around 12 hours, if I'm using binoculars, if I'm using a telescope, I might be able to find it in the sky and then be able to see it with my naked eye. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I can only see it through the use of the telescope or the binoculars. Fadal.
Allah bless you, Sheikh Abdul Fattah, for your explanation. And here I want to make a comment, just keep in mind. Yes, we mentioned scholars, not all of them adopted calculation. Yes, they differ on that. However, all of them agreed calculation and science has to be considered. In the case that science, they said impossible to see. So we have halatul nafi or halatul ithbat. In order to that, let's say as simple as that, scientifically they said it's impossible that moon can be sighted. And then somebody say, I have seen it. All the scholars in the past, and even in our time, the contemporary time, they said, we, in this case, consider the science and we reject the witness of the person. We didn't consider. Because it has no basis in this case.
Yeah.
So that should be clear when we clearly the moon and the conjunction happen just 5 hours before the sunset. Think of that. 5 hours before the sunset, that we call it the birth of the moon. So you have only 5 hours. How possible that somebody will say, I have seen the moon above the horizon. In this case, that's scholars, they said, you know what? We're not even going to consider what you are talking about. This is something the science, they said it's impossible, that can be proven, then they will never consider. And why I'm saying that? Because it's happened multiple times that in different locations, without going specific, where only a few hours before the sunset, that scientifically that's the time of conjunction. And despite all of that, there's an announcement of certain countries, they said moon was sighted. I don't know what consider that. But for me, knowing those facts, I'm not feeling obligated first. I'm not feeling happy to follow that opinion as it's impossible, like scientifically, that's to be supported by any. So that's why when Sheikh Abdul Fattah told you these information are important, so it's important, please, pay attention to it.
So what are the factors that affect visibility of the moon? There are different factors. One is, as we talk about, its age. How old is the moon? Meaning how many hours after conjunction. That has an effect on the elongation, the angular distance of the moon from the sun. So if it's 0 degrees, can't see it. 1 degree, still very impossible to see. 2 degrees, you still can't see it. It has to be a certain number of degrees, the elongation, in order for you to be able to see it. And we'll see examples of this, of how far the moon has to be from the sun to actually be able to see it, as well as the atmospheric conditions. The background of the practice in London in the past was that generally the imams, they didn't have a written policy, and it was based on if it was seen in Mecca and they announced it, then we announced it. We didn't consider here locally in terms of sighting the moon or anything of that sort. We said if they declare it in Mecca, then we accept it. And that was the practice for decades, many years, right? When I arrived in 2013, that was the practice, that it was based on Mecca. Then as time progressed, the imams, they accepted from other places in the Muslim world, if they declared that they saw the moon, then we also accepted it, right? Why was there a need to change? Why did we feel that we need to change or shift our methodology here locally? The idea is that, as Imam Jamali mentioned, we want to bring about unification, to be able to unite the Muslims, those who are saying calculations only, and those who are saying moon sighting and that's it, like physical moon sighting. The idea of our criterion is to bridge the two together. We're using calculations, but we've shifted the calculation a bit so that it's based on the possibility of sighting the moon, taking that into consideration, so that we can predict it, but at the same time, it takes into account the moon sighting. Those who are proponents of calculation, they don't take moon sighting into accountability. Based it solely on calculation, they say, okay, that's the point. If it's calculated as this, then we accept it. And so this is why we wanted to shift it. And the hope is that this approach will be adopted on a wider scale, beyond London. If the Muslims of North America adopt this criterion, it will unite the Muslims. This is what our proposition is. Those who are proponents of moon sighting, as well as those who are proponents of calculation. It bridges the two, it brings them together. And so what is the criterion? April of this year, we talked about this, and this was presented, and all of the members of the Imams Council, all 8 of us, unanimously agreed, we're accepting this criterion, we're adopting it for all of the months, with the exception of Dhul Hijjah. And the reason for the exception of Dhul Hijjah, this is not a hill that we wanted to die on, so to speak. We know that if Saudi declares the month of Dhul Hijjah and all of the Hujjaj are there and on Arafat and they're doing their Udhiyah on Eid al-Adha, and we're doing it on a different date, this is going to cause too much fitna. It's going to cause too much discontent amongst the Muslims and dissension, and it wouldn't be accepted. So this is the only month that we said, okay, for now, this is not, we're going to leave that, only that month for Saudi Arabia, for them to declare, because of the Hajjaj. So this is for all the months except for Dhul Hijjah. What's the criterion? Number one, this is based on local. This is based on our decision for London, Ontario, locally and the surrounding areas, regardless of what other localities in the world declare. So we're not waiting for Saudi Arabia to declare it. We're not waiting for Turkey, Syria, Morocco, Egypt, or even here in North America. If, say, for example, people in California, they declare it, well, that's 2 hours after us in terms of the time zone. We're not going to wait 2 hours to be able to determine whether the new month has started or not. Our criterion is local. And so the idea is we're going to start locally, and those who adopt this, then the unity will grow from there. That's the first thing. The second is that the beginning of all the months will be, this is what is in bold here, it is based on the possibility of an easily visible naked eye moon sighting. What do we mean by naked eye moon sighting? Without the use of an optical aid. But it's based on the possibility of it, not on the actual sighting of it. And so that allows us to be able to predict in advance when the new months would begin, to help for people who need to take time off work, for the masajid to be able to organize Eid prayers, etc. They have a definitive date. We can tell them in advance, but it's not based solely on calculations of the new moon and conjunction. It's based on the easily visible naked eye moon sighting that is possible. Not moon sighting based on only using optical aids or visible if the conditions are perfect. No, where it's easily visible. And what that allows, because we're in the West, if we're at that point, anywhere in the East, they'll see it, guaranteed. They will see it east of us. Here in North America, if we have an easily visible naked eye moon sighting possibility, and I have some charts that I'll show you that will explain this in more detail, but we have a limit, and the limit is the Yukon. Right? So within Canada, we don't go west further than the Yukon. So it excludes Alaska, it excludes the Polynesian Islands, Hawaii. No, that's our cutoff point. Right? So we're not talking about Alaska or the Polynesian Islands.
If I want to add for this, just for clarity, there's an actual moon sighting, which no person that go against. And any person that himself observe that and have seen it, then the obligation on that person, even if all other against, even nobody other seen, nobody even trusted him. So that's the actual moon sighting. But that's not always that the case is easy, as you mentioned. That's not as you think, especially in our area. It's not only about the ability, the knowledge, the equipment, it's a whole story. It's not that easy. And then there's the scientific moon sighting. As we say, like especially when you make the criteria a little bit strict, when you make it based on the naked eye, then that scientific moon sighting with a high percent will be there with maybe 1% or less that it might be people not able to sight the moon. Because even we're not considering one local area for that, but it's a wide area. Even if it was cloudy here, it's not going to be in the other area. So be assured with that, when you make it with this way, that even those that are taking the actual moon sighting, they will end up to have, same result as this. However, for those they're only considering the different ways where they're not considering the degree, for example, like the degree that we'll talk about it, the hours after the birth of the moon, their determination, not by necessity, will match the actual moon sighting. So this is where the difference is. You get the point? So we are shifting a little bit close to the moon sighting, but at the same time achieving the point where make it easy for arrangement for many of our ritual, our activities, when you know in advance when the beginning. So you're not just waiting for the actual moon sighting that to be determined. So this is, the point behind this. There's one thing I want to add. I know it's Maghrib, I guess, and then we'll continue after 1 minute until Adhan, and we'll continue inshallah after Salah bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. But one thing that you have to make sure to understand about this, that our location is a prime location, as here when in Canada. And depends on the moon sighting somewhere else, not considered the local one, it might actually put us in a trouble. How? Because let's say the Gulf area, they said we have not seen it, it's impossible. Does not mean that it's impossible here. Because they will see it after us, not before us. If they said we have sighted the moon, then actually it's hujjah on us. Because they will never see, unless we already saw it. So considering them, especially in the case of denying, that's not helping us, because it might actually be sighted here in our area, but not there. So in this case, we're going to have a trouble. That's why we are not behind them, we are before them. Then we have to depend on ourselves, not depend on them. Am I clear in this point? And another things, as being proven for many years, we can have the data. It was impossible to be sighted even with devices. It was impossible to be sighted with optical aid. And then somebody will come from the Gulf area, they will say, we have sighted the moon. How possible that would be? It's impossible in our locality to be sighted even with the optical aid, which we should see it before them. And somebody will come in a later announcement, they say, oh, we have seen it. This is the problematic issue that we cannot accept it anymore. We're not just a blinding followers. We need to have our own criteria to have peace when we practice. And that's why it's necessity that we have to adopt a criteria that is practical, is correct, and something that all agreed upon. We'll continue inshallah after Salah to talk about this topic, because it's really important. Inshallah, that will bring unity and a clear understanding for our community. May Allah bless you all. Jazakumullah khairan.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
استووا اقيموا صفوفكم واعتدلوا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. والعاديات ضبحا فالموريات قدحا فالمغيرات صبحا فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن به جمعا. إن الإنسان لربه لكنود وإنه على ذلك لشهيد وإنه لحب الخير لشديد. أفلا يعلم إذا بعثر ما في القبور وحصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. القارعة ما القارعة وما أدراك ما القارعة. يوم يكون الناس كالفراش المبثوث وتكون الجبال كالعهن المنفوش. فأما من ثقلت موازينه فهو في عيشة راضية وأما من خفت موازينه فأمه هاوية وما أدراك ما هي نار حامية. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين، اللهم انصر من نصر الدين، اللهم عليك بالظالمين المعتدين، اللهم إنا نجعلك في نحورهم ونعوذ بك من شرورهم، اللهم اجعل دائرة السوء عليهم واكفنا شرهم بما شئت يا الله. اللهم أرنا فيهم يوما قريبا يا الله، أرنا فيهم عجائب قدرتك يا الله. اللهم كن مع إخواننا المسلمين المستضعفين في كل مكان، اللهم انصر إخواننا في غزة، اللهم رحماك بأهلنا في غزة، اللهم كن معهم ولا تكن عليهم، اللهم انصرهم ولا تنصر عليهم، اللهم اطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف وانصرهم على القوم الكافرين. وصل اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. My dear brothers and sisters, inshallah, right after the sunnah, we'll continue with our talk of today, with an important topic. We're going to have another 20 minutes before receiving your questions regarding the Islamic month, understanding the beginning of the Islamic month locally. It's very important that we address this topic at this time. So we will have a criteria that's to determine the beginning of the month for every month, not only when it comes like to Ramadan or Eid, as all those months are really important for us, and we have to be consistent in our way, having same, method of determining that at the beginning of all months. So inshallah, we'll continue with that and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Jazakumullah khairan. نجدد الحمد لله ونثني بالصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. My dear brothers and sisters, may Allah bless you all and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant the best for all of us in this life and hereafter. Can I ask just the brothers to clear that area in the back so the sisters they can join us and they see the presentation. Thank you. Okay, inshallah we'll resume our program and we'll listen to the rest of the presentation that our Fadilatul Shaykh, may Allah bless him, Shaykh Abdul Fattah, he just started. Bismillah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So before the prayer we had spoken about a number of different things, talking about the history of moon sighting versus calculations. We spoke about some of the science behind moon sighting and what is required to be able to sight the moon. And at the same time, the way in which, what are the factors that are needed to be able to sight the moon. The last thing that I had spoken about was the criterion that the London Council of Imams has unanimously agreed upon for determining the beginning of the new months. And I mentioned the first criterion is that this is for London locally and for the surrounding areas, and whoever within our locality wants to take this as the determination for the beginning of the Islamic months. So we're not looking at what other countries, what other localities are doing. This is for our locality here. The second criterion is that the beginning of all of the Islamic months, with the exception of Dhul Hijjah, is based on the possibility of an easily visible naked eye moon sighting, which means without the use of optical aids. No binoculars, no telescopes. If you stand on the horizon and the sky is clear, the chances of you being able to see the new crescent moon is likely. That's what we are basing this on. It's based on the possibility of it. And I'll show you an example when we talk about the moon sighting visibility maps, which I'll get into in a minute. But the idea is that it's based on North America, no further west than the Yukon. And I'll show you in the maps in a moment why that is important. So we're not talking about Alaska, nor the Polynesian Islands, Hawaii and whatnot. We're not going that far west. We're stopping basically at the Yukon. And so part of this criterion, this is still number 2, the way that we determine the possibility of an easily visible naked eye moon sighting is through a number of different sources. Now, each of these are links to various visibility maps that the scientists, Muslim scientists and non-Muslim scientists, they use different calculations, algorithms, software to be able to determine how predictable or how possible it is to actually see the moon. And so we're using all of these different resources, which all basically say the same thing, but they're just using their different formats. And I'll show you examples of each one of these in a moment. All of the crescent visibility maps that are generated by these resources would have to indicate, all 4 of them would have to indicate an easily visible naked eye moon sighting within North America without the use of an optical aid that is anywhere along the same longitudinal lines that is not beyond 141 degrees west. And I'll show you what that line is, the 141st meridian, when we're talking about latitude and longitude. This is the longitudinal line that goes from north to south, and it's the 141st meridian, and I'll show that to you on a map in a moment. The third criterion is that we're not going to go beyond 1 year. Meaning what? Meaning we're in the year now 1447. The most that we will give indications for is for 1448 Hijri. We're not going to go beyond that, just to ensure that we're using the most up-to-date information when it comes to the visibility maps and whatnot. So that's our third criterion. So those are the 3 basic criterion that we have agreed upon, and we would make announcements for each of the months. So we're not just going to announce when Ramadan begins or when Ramadan ends, or just for Dhul Hijjah or Muharram. We're going to do it for all of the months, every single one of them, right? Now here we have an example of a visibility map and how we actually put into application our criteria. Now this is a visibility map that is produced by the criterion. His name is Fawzi Kayali. And this is, the criterion is based on Khalid Shawkat. Sayyid Khalid Shawkat, who's known as the one who developed the moonsighting.com website. So if you've ever had anything to do with moon sighting, you'll know this website, moonsighting.com, okay? And he's been doing this for years, well over 30 years. And so this is based on his criterion. Now when you look at this moon visibility map, there are a number of important things that need to be noted here. The first is, when is the new moon, the conjunction? Now, keep in mind, this is all for Muharram of this year. So when people were talking about Ashura being Saturday, June or July the 5th, we were saying that it was actually July the 6th. It was on the Sunday, not the Saturday. And so the reason is because it's based on this criterion that we use here. Conjunction, which is when the new moon happens, and that happens at one time across the entire world, right? It's one moment. And so here it indicates that the new moon was on Wednesday, June 25th at 10:30 in the morning, universal time. Universal time is here in the UK, right? This is universal time. It's going to be in this time zone. We are 5 hours behind universal time. So in other words, the UK, they're 5 hours ahead of us. When we're looking at the Gulf countries, they're a further 2 or 3 hours ahead of universal time. And that's important to be able to understand. Because remember, all those different factors that contribute to us being able to see the moon, how old the moon is, how many hours after conjunction, the elongation, how high the moon is, the altitude, these are all important. Now, for those who use calculations, so the Fiqh Council of North America, they have determined the start of the new months solely, strictly based on calculations. That is, the moon is, the elongation angle is 8 degrees, and the altitude above the horizon is 5 degrees. That's what this yellow line here represents. Now the yellow line, if it represents elongation of 8 degrees, meaning how far the moon has gone away from the sun, as well as the altitude, how high it is above the horizon, the red area in this map, it shows that the moon is only visible with optical aid. You have to use an optical aid to be able to see the new moon. So that would be all of these areas here. West Africa, northern part of South America, and then some parts of Canada, eastern Canada. All of it, you'd have to use optical aid in order to be able to see the new moon. Now, what's noticeable here? If you look at the entire Middle East, it's not even in the red area. So what does that mean? If it's not in the red area, what does that mean? Can you see it? They cannot see it here. They cannot see it. Scientifically, it is impossible to see the new moon in any of these areas here, whether it's Australia, whether it's in India, whether it's in the Gulf region, whether it's in East Africa, right, or South Africa here. Impossible. They can't see it because the moon is not old enough. There hasn't been enough hours of passing from conjunction, because if the moon is born, the new moon is at 10:30 universal time, that would be around 1:30 in Saudi Arabia. What time is sunset in Saudi Arabia? It's going to be at 6:37. How many hours would that be after conjunction? 6, 7 hours, 8 hours maximum, right? In other words, it's not enough time for them to be able to see it. So if anyone in these regions comes and say, oh, we saw the moon, we'd be like, how? It's impossible. Scientifically, you can't see it. Even with optical aids, the furthest east that is possible is somewhere in Europe. That's the furthest east. You can't go any further east. You won't be able to see it. When we're talking about our criterion here, the gray area is that you need the optical aid to find the moon. Once you find the moon with an optical aid, then you might be able to see it with your naked eye, possibly, right? Here, you can't see it with the naked eye at all. You can only see it through optical aid, through the use of telescopes or binoculars. You cannot see it. Even if you find it in the sky and you take away the optical aid, you won't be able to see it. That's what the red zone here indicates. The gray indicates that I need an optical aid to find the moon first, and then possibly I might be able to see it with the naked eye. The blue area here, it says that it's visible with the naked eye if the conditions are perfect, meaning the atmospheric conditions are perfect. It's not cloudy, that the moon will be enough above the horizon, the altitude is high enough right? If the conditions are perfect, the atmosphere conditions, it's not foggy, not hazy, right? I'll be able to see it, if the conditions are perfect. Now notice here, that only applies to the eastern or the western part of the United States, okay? That those who were able to possibly see it would be in the western part of the United States. Now for Muharram of this year, there was only one sighting that was reported in North America that was accepted. Only one sighting, and that was in San Diego, California, right? No other place cited it. No other place cited. The only one place that was cited and that was accepted, and it had to be verified, right? And it took some time to verify it, was in San Diego. We're here, way far east of that. And so based on our criterion, the green is where it is easily visible with the naked eye. There's no place in the world where it was green. That's why, based on our criterion, we said that the month of Muharram doesn't begin June the 26th, which is Thursday. We said that it would begin the Friday, June the 27th, which would make Ashura on Sunday. That was July the 6th, not the 5th. And so that is based on an easily visible naked eye moon sighting. Now this is where we differed with the Fiqh Council, because this is the Fiqh Council's criterion, right? Notice though, this does not take into consideration the very possibility of seeing the moon with the naked eye. So why did we choose this criterion? It's because we want to bring as many people together as possible. It is not simply based on a calculation, that is 8 degrees elongation, 5 degrees of altitude, and where you cannot possibly see the moon with the naked eye. It's impossible, you can't see it. We said that we want to be able to bring those who are proponents of moon sighting to say, let's bring that criterion into the fold so that more Muslims will be able to say, yes, we agree this is the time, that is the beginning of the new month. But we don't go by anyone who is here, because it's impossible, even if they claim to see it. They said that they saw it, but astronomically, scientifically, impossible. This is one map. Here we have another map. It's giving you the same information, but it's a different graphic, different algorithms, and the way that they use it. They came up with, this is a different map by a different group of scientists. So this is coming from the Web Space Science. If you look at this map, the red here is the moon sets before the sun sets. If the moon goes below the horizon before the sun does, can you see the moon? Impossible. It doesn't make sense. You can't. It's impossible because the moon has set before the sun sets. And if the sun is up, you can't see the moon. It's impossible. The purple area is where it's before conjunction, meaning before the actual time of the new moon. Where it shows blank is that it's below the Danjan limit, and all of this here is basically saying you can't see the moon. It's impossible, right? So notice the entire Middle East, right? The entire continent of Africa, all of Europe, none of it. This is a different criterion that they're using. It's a different visibility map. You can see some of the differences here, because there are different criterion that they use to predict the visibility map. But here, no one in Europe would be able to see it based on this particular criterion. Here, this pinkish color, it says not visible with telescopes. Yellow, it says only visible with binoculars or conventional telescopes, right? And that's the area that we're in. Then this lighter green, visible to the unaided eye after you find it with the optical aid. So this is equivalent to the gray area on this map. It's pretty well the same, right? This green part, it says visible under perfect atmospheric conditions. Again, it's saying the exact same thing. This is the easily visible with the unaided eye. It's way, way far west. Now, when we were talking about 141 degrees west, that meridian, that is going to be here. If you look at, these are the degrees here. This is 150, this is 120. It's going to be here. This is the Yukon. That line of the Yukon, that's the 141st meridian. If it's green anywhere east of that, as the London Council of Imams, we will say then the new month will begin, right? So again, impossible. Here's a third criterion, right? Another visibility map that, again, same thing. It shows nowhere in the Middle East or east of it could you see the moon. Impossible. The yellow, only visible using optical aids. Again, similar to the Khalid Shawkat's map from moon sighting. And then the lighter yellow, you may need optical aids to see it. Easy for naked eye sighting, way over here. So it's beyond our limit. So, saying the same thing, we can't see it. And then the last map that we have here, this is using the ODA criterion, and this is also for Muharram. Again, the red indicates it cannot be seen. No color, not possible. So all this here, not possible. You can't see it. Scientifically, it's impossible. All these maps are saying the same thing, even though they're produced different ways, or different people have produced them. They're all saying the exact same thing. For us, as the London Council of Imams, we say all four of these maps have to indicate easily visible somewhere that is east of 141 degrees west of the meridian, right? Anywhere, if it's green, we'll say that, okay, that's the new month. It has begun. And so the issue or the idea behind that is that if anyone who is can be able to see it within North America will accept that. But anyone who claims that they saw it in the Middle East, if they can actually see it, we will have more chances or possibilities of seeing it. And that's what Sheikh Jamali was saying actually before. If they were able to see it, scientifically it was possible, we have more right, and it's by stronger reasoning that we would be able to see it. But when we're dealing with this here, where nobody could see it really without the use of an optical aid, definitely not by naked eye, and even those who could see it with the naked eye, was very, very, very slim portion here in the western part, but it wasn't easily visible. It's only visible if perfect conditions. So our widening of that criterion, yes, our criterion is based on calculations solely. But the idea is that we are bringing more people into the fold, so to speak, that those who are proponents of following the sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ in seeing the moon, that on the ground the results will align 95, if not more, % of the times. Meaning that what we declare based on moon sighting, the possibility of it will actually happen 95% of the time within North America, that it will align with the vast majority of people. So this is a way to balance between the two. I hope that that was clear. There are other examples that I could show you. Actually, for tonight, tonight is the 29th night of Muharram. And so based on, I can actually show you for Safar, the criterion for Safar. If you want, I'll show you the maps for Safar.
So while Sheikh Haftar will bring the graphics, and you will see that we're pleased, according to our criteria, to announce that tomorrow will be the beginning of
Safar,
the month of Safar.
No.
And just for your information, already I received the picture of the new crescent being sighted in the city of Voz Vigoso, that's in Brasilia. So it's already been sighted there, and more pictures will come as we are connected with other groups. Today, just to have a piece of heart, even following our criteria. We even recommended our criteria as we are following this, and we'll see how it's work. So inshallah, for many years, we'll see that inshallah will be accurate, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we're collecting even the data, so it's already being cited somewhere in America, but will get more like, of pictures coming, be nice subhanahu wa ta'ala from other cities. And at this moment, as that's being confirmed, that the beginning of the new month, as Rasulullah, he used to say the dua in the new crescent, as inshallah this is reviving the sunnah, we'll repeat the dua together. Allahumma ahillahu alayna bil-amni wal-iman wal-salamati wal-islam wal-tawfiqi lima tuhibbu wa tarda Rabbuna wa rabbuka Allah.
So for the month of Safar, the astronomical new moon, which is conjunction, it happened yesterday. But it happened late yesterday at 7:11 p.m. Universal Time. And so in UK time, at 7:11 in the UK, that's when conjunction happened yesterday. So obviously it's impossible. The moon sets here before the sun sets, so you can't see it. The purple is that this is where it's before conjunction. So again, impossible. This is the point of conjunction. Anywhere here, you could not have seen it yesterday. The moon was way too young, okay? And so today, being the 29th of Muharram, when you look at the visibility map, all of these areas that are in this deep green here, they're easily visible to the unaided eye. This is all here in North America, South America, West Africa. All of this is possibility. So based on this criterion, we would say that definitely tomorrow is the first day of Safar. And as Imam Jamali mentioned, there will be people who will have seen it far east of us. And so if the sky actually, right after Maghrib prayer, I went out to be able to try to look for it. We couldn't see it because of the clouds, but also because of the horizon, that the trees and whatnot are there, and the buildings. So the moon was too low for us to be able to see, but even then it was cloudy. But there's actually an area in London that I intend to go on a regular basis to be able to check the moon, just in terms of following that sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ. It's in Komoka National or Provincial Park. But we will be able to know beforehand what are the possibilities of being able to see the new moon. So this is for the month of Safar. When we look at other months of the year, whether it's Ramadan, whether it's Shawwal, we have an idea and we have our determination of when those months are going to begin based on this criterion. But we know that there was a controversy that happened last year in terms of for last year of the Hijrah. This year, of course, Miladi, but when it came to the end of Ramadan, there was a lot of debate about that. And that was because they declared the new month of Shawwal when the moon was only 4.5 hours old when the sun set in the Gulf. It was only 4.5 hours old. It is impossible to see it in any way, shape, or form. It was literally only 4.5 hours, but yet nonetheless, many countries in the Gulf region and in the Muslim world, they declared it. Even though, and there were astronomers from the Gulf, all of whom they said it's impossible to see. You can't see it. What they saw, what they determined, Allahu Ta'ala alam, but as far as from a scientific point of view, it was impossible to see. But yet nonetheless, they declared that they saw it. So this has happened many, many, many times over many years. And so this is one of the reasons why here we're saying that we're going to follow this criterion, because it uses the scientific calculations in order to be able to know the possibility of an easily visible naked eye moon sighting, while at the same time being able to say that if anyone east of us claimed that they saw it, we can say, no, they couldn't have. Nafi. That we use the calculations for Nafi, for negation of the possibility of them seeing it, because it literally is scientifically impossible. So that's the summary of our criterion. And so at this point, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask in terms of this criterion and how we will be following this as the London Council of Imams for our region. We're hoping that, again, this goes beyond our region. I've already asked for our criterion to be forwarded to the Fiqh Council of North America, members of the Fiqh Council of North America, so that they can look at it. And if we bring people closer together, that's the idea and the goal is unity amongst the Muslims. That we'll be able to say those who want moon sighting and they go by moon sighting, they can be brought closer to this the unity of the Muslims, where we're all celebrating and beginning the months at the same time based on this criterion. That's what we propose based on this, and is something that, as far as I know, has not been proposed anywhere else up until this point in time. Wallahu ta'ala.
That means if they see the moon in Saudi Arabia or that area after us 8 hours or a day, which one is right? If they see it after us, 8 hours or a full day?
So when we're talking about Shawwal, for example, this was actually from last year, or of the Hijri, which was this year, of course, at the end of Ramadan. This is the visibility map for Shawwal of 1446. We're now in 1447. Notice here, there is no possibility of them being able to, anywhere in Asia, Africa, they could not have seen it, period. And so what this is telling us is that, okay, if they claim to have seen it, remember the moon is in the same position for everyone in the world at the same time. What's the difference? Time zones. When conjunction happens, it happens at one point. The time will differ around the world based on where you are. So when we're looking at the March 29, 2025 at 11 in the morning, universal time, that would have been 11 minus 8, 3. 3 in the morning here in North America, in London time or Toronto time. Whereas in Saudi Arabia, it would have been at 12, 1 o'clock, right? If it's 2 hours ahead of universal time, or 3 hours, then it would be at 1 o'clock. It's the same time, the same moment. What differs is the time zone that it happens. So it's based on where the position of the moon is. Do you see the difference, Sheikh Yaqub? Do you understand? Right? Because it's based on the position of the moon. So it happens at one point. The new moon, it's one point. It's not like there's a new moon for us, and then there's a new moon for Saudi Arabia, and then there's a new moon for China, right? No, it's one new moon at the same time for everyone. But what time is it? It depends on where you are. You get it? So that's the whole point behind understanding the science behind how the new moon works.
So, I know from where your question came, because you refer to that, is that hours, the whole day or part of the day? Here, this question is irrelevant because, yes, we share part of the night. We share part of the night. And if they have seen it, of course, we will consider that. But following this criteria will make it actually more easier to determine and unite all of those all together. In other words, if according to this criteria that they have, there is a possibility they will see it, that means it's already we having that, so we are not missing this point. So let's say the Saudi Arabia, there is a possibility that we see. That means it's not only the possibility for us to see, it's even higher
Yeah.
than what they are could be for them. But the issue comes when we are able to see, or there's a possibility that we'll see, and they cannot see. This is the issue. So if there is a possibility that we can see, how come that we know for sure they cannot see it themselves, and we're waiting for their announcement? We're not going to wait for that, because scientifically, that there is a chance that we will see, and for them, we're not gonna see the moon in that case.
So for the month of Safar, which is tomorrow, this is the Khalid Shawkat's visibility map for that. This will help demonstrate this more clearly. In Saudi Arabia, it's in the blue area. What is blue? It means it's visible if the conditions are perfect. So that's where they are, that when the sun set in Saudi Arabia, does the sun set before or after? After. Very good. We're here, so we still have 7-8 hours before the sun sets when the sun sets in Saudi Arabia. When the sun set in Saudi Arabia, they had a chance to actually see it because it was possible to see it when the conditions were visible. Now you give another 8 hours till we get to North America. What that means is that the moon is getting 8 hours older. It means that the angle of elongation, it moves further away from the sun, which makes the crescent moon bigger, and then it also gives us a stronger chance of being able to see it. That's why it's all green here, is because when the sun sets here, it's going to be 8 hours after it sets here, which is going to be several hours after it sets here. And so this is all based on the position of the moon. Do you see the point now? Right, because right now they're praying Fajr, but we're here. It's Maghrib time and it's going to be Isha time. But for them, the sun, it set 5, 6, 7 hours ago, right? Over there, the sun set 7 hours ago. So the moon is in the position here. When by the time the sun sets here, the moon is going to move further away from the sun, which gives us a higher possibility of us being able to see it more clearly. Did you get it? Alaykum salam. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Correct. Right.
Okay, so I could remember during the Muharram, so we experienced, that was kind of controversial.
Yes.
And what is it called? Ashura.
Ashura, yes.
So, because over there, I think the Ashura was on Saturday.
Right.
But the scholars advise people that, okay, you can take Saturday and Sunday for, so for here people were saying that, okay, it should be on Sunday.
Right.
Based on this criteria.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm not, so my question now is, I would like you to give clarification. Okay, don't we see that it's like we're having like over 24 hours between, and you said the universal time based on your presentation,
Yeah.
you said it's 5 hours different.
Right. Sure.
So if so that's my number one
No,
question.
that's,
I have something else again. So if we try to, there are some areas that you say you cannot see, you can actually
Correct.
sight the moon.
Yes.
Except with the use of the optic aids.
Right.
Yeah. So in some places, can they, after certain days, you can actually see with the
Yes.
naked eyes,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay, so before that day, you can't see it, but
Right.
can there be kind of extrapolation to, what extrapolation, which I believe this is what
That's
they
what
must have
this
done
is.
here.
Yeah. That's
So
what this is.
Can that be allowed to do Islamic jurisdictions?
Well, this is where the controversy comes in for those who are using calculations. So, for example, here, this yellow line, that's the criterion used by the Fiqh Council of North America to say that if this happens anywhere in North America and beyond, they declare the new month. You can't see the moon here without an optical aid. You have to use a telescope, and you can only see it using a telescope or binoculars, right? Using an optical aid in this area here. What we're saying is that no, we have to wait until it's easily visible anywhere in North America for us to be able to say that the new month has begun. Now look at for Muharram. This here in the Middle East, is it possible to see the moon? You can't see it. They still declared it. That's the problem. This is the issue, where there is no possibility whatsoever anywhere in the Middle East and beyond that they could have seen it. So for example, and people when they're saying most Muslims did Ashura on the Saturday, not the Sunday, that's not necessarily true. Why? Australia, they did it Sunday. India, 100 million Muslims, Saturday. They did it on Sunday actually, not on Saturday. Same thing with Australia, same thing with all of these areas here that are east of the Gulf, they all did it on Sunday. And so that's a huge population of the Muslims, whether you're looking at here in India and Pakistan and Afghanistan and the Indonesia and Malaysia and Singapore, all these places in Australia, they did it on Sunday, Ashura, not on Saturday.
So just if I want to add something, brother, if I want to add something.
Right.
And that's not for the London Council of Imams. That's who I am, Muhammad. Because I don't want other people to be liable for what I'm going to say. There is a controversy for the Saudi Arabia announcement for many years, where it's impossible that to be seen. And somebody will come to we have seen it. And same people there, same tribes, and they can, come, they will have seen it. This is a big question mark, and that's why even I have to declare it. I'm not even happy to follow them in the Hajj for the Eid al-Adha. I'm not feeling really happy to follow that, and it might be one time we would have our own, because technically the Eid, it's a 10th of Dhul Hijjah. Let's say in one day, that's the big of the Hijjah, we determine based on even not a calculation, based on actual moon sighting, where they have not determined. We're still gonna follow them? No, we have to follow our ru'ya. That's the fiqh. So because of there's question mark about their determination, and because of the lack of trust that was built for many years, I'm not even happy to really to tolerate what they make from the announcement, to be honest. So I will ask every one of you to go and refer and see even what the other scholars that in the field, what they said from Saudi Arabia, scholars themselves, what they said about their local announcement. And I want them to have the courage. Why not standing up? They said we are following calculations. Why they still keeping saying we are following observation where they're not? That's where something, as I said, I responsible for this, comment, not the London Council of Imams.
Because even with the calculation, if we're talking about conjunction, then okay, all of this would be considered as, yes, the new month will have begun based on conjunction, all of these areas. But the issue is that it's not based on conjunction. It's based on ru'ya. And this is where, because if you want to use calculations, then why not use conjunction if that's the point, right? Why do you even have to have this yellow line here? If it's based on conjunction, then khalas, you have this here. 10:30 universal time is conjunction, therefore the new month begins after conjunction, done. But they don't use even that for the calculation, right? They have this 8 degrees of elongation, 5 degrees of altitude, which is impossible to see with the naked eye. You can only use optical aids to see the moon. What was your question in terms of the time zones?
In those areas where they experience, where is universal time, where North American is like I mean, during this summertime, it's 5 hours different.
Right.
We are 5 hours. They are 5 hours ahead of us.
Correct.
Okay, so
So
those
universal time, just for
Yeah, so
information,
those
universal
areas-
time is Greenwich.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
England
Yeah,
is
Greenwich
universal time.
environment. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So those environment, their hash rate was actually on Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and here, in North America, it's on Sunday. So my question is, don't we see that the time is just too much? Considering what you just presented now. So how do we now correlate what you said now with that time difference?
So
Which is
it's
over
a great
24
it's a
hours.
great question. Just in terms of, do you think that it is too much? The reason why we're using the easily visible, like the green area, is because that way you will bring the most number of Muslims together when it comes to the actual sighting of the moon. As I had mentioned before the prayer, for Muharram, there was one place in North America that was able to see the moon without optical aid. It was in San Diego, and that's far, far, far west. We're here in London. We're not going to wait 2 hours for their declaration in order for us to say, okay, the new month has begun. And that's what used to happen in the past, that we would wait for the 2 hours until 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, midnight, until the sun set on the far west coast of North America. And then we would say, did they see it? Did they not see it? And everyone is waiting and wondering, is the next day the new month or not? What we're doing is we're making that determination in advance, but based on easily visible, right? The possibility of easily visible naked eye moon sighting. That's why we're giving it that much more time, okay? Is that way, and then when it happens on the ground, guess what? It will align. People will see it with their naked eye, and that's what's going to bring the Muslims together more so. Based on that, it's going to align with what actually happens on the ground. But everyone has to agree on that criterion. And that's what we're working on now.
Jazakallah khairan. Having this criteria to be determined, that's not only bridging the gap, but reaching a point that your calculation will be more accurate toward, and matching the actual sightseeing than what even the Fiqh Council are determining. That's one point. I will say it again. So, as we mentioned, there is a calculation and there's observation. However, the calculation with this way, making this strict criteria like to be seen with the naked eye, that's increasing the chance, to be matching with the actual sightseeing. Okay? And let's say the actual sightseeing never happened because of weather. Let's say, because we say we need to determine the area that has to be seen with the with the naked eye, and if not being seen by naked eye, for sure it's going to be seen by optical aid. So, and we have no issue with the optical aid. If somebody will come to say, you know what, I have seen it with the optical aid, we have no issue with that. But going further with making the condition and base a calculation by the naked eye, that actually will cover even the case of having bad weather and nobody have seen it, with the naked eye, because for sure will be seen with the optical aid. In other words, the possibility of even low possibility of the moon being sighted by naked eye, it's equal to high possibility for the moon to be seen by optical aid. Does that make sense? Yes. So that's why we are seeing this criteria at the end of the day, the result of it will be most likely match with those they insist to only follow the actual sightseeing. And we hope by determining this and testing this criteria, we hope that all we're going to follow it, and that's how united the Ummah, inshallah.
Let me give one more example. This is for Ramadan of this year, all right? This is something that, again, using these visibility maps, I'll show all 4 visibility maps when it comes to the determination of Ramadan for 1447. The new moon, which is conjunction, is going to be February the 17th, Tuesday, February 17th at 12 o'clock Greenwich time. That would mean that in the Gulf region and in the Middle East, it's going to be at 5 o'clock in the late afternoon. If the sun sets, and possibly the sun will have already set, it's February, it's the winter, if the sun sets at 6 o'clock, can you see the moon in Saudi Arabia or in the Gulf? Impossible, okay? And so anywhere here in this area, it's impossible to see the new moon. You cannot see it. All right, now let's look at in our area.
And please keep that in mind.
Yeah, look at in our area.
Keep that in
now.
mind, because we are, expecting
Yeah.
the Saudi Arabia will announce, even it's impossible. You see, keep that in mind. It's coming.
They will likely announce that they have seen it when the time comes. Now here, when we see this yellow line, if you remember, I was talking about this yellow line. Elongation, meaning the distance of the moon from the sun, is 8 degrees, and it's going to be 5 degrees above the horizon. That happens here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Okay? The Fiqh Council of North America, they've already stated that Ramadan is going to begin on February the 18th. Despite that, there's no place in North America that you can see the moon with the naked eye. No possibility, 0 chances. Even only with optical aids, it's only the western, far western part of North America, not even in Canada. Just in the United States, there are some areas with an optical aid, and only with an optical aid, with a binocular or with telescope, that you'd be able to see the new moon. Very remote possibility with an optical aid, let alone with the naked eye. You can't see it, right? Like even here, the gray is, you need an optical aid to find the moon, and then you might be able to see it. But that's far, far, far west. And so they've already declared that Ramadan is going to begin Wednesday, February the 18th. For us, here in London, the Fiqh Council of North America, or the London Council of Imams, we are saying that Ramadan is not going to begin Wednesday, February 18th. We're saying that it'll be Thursday, February 19th, based on this criterion. Okay? And that's why we want to make this clear, that there's no place in the world that you can see the new moon, period, with the naked eye. It's impossible anywhere in the world on Tuesday, February the 17th. Nobody can see it anywhere in the world with the eye. It's impossible. But yet, nonetheless, there will be declarations that will say that it's going to be Wednesday. Okay? So just to be very clear. And that's what all of the maps say. Okay? Here, even in this map, it shows you that the sun, the moon is going to set before the sun, which it's impossible then, by scientifically or otherwise. But all of this area here, you can't see the moon at all. With optical aids, with binoculars, telescopes, you can't see it, right? And this is for Tuesday, February 17th, which means that Ramadan, if you're basing it on moon sighting, you cannot see the moon. It won't be Wednesday, okay? That Sha'ban would be 30 days, and then Ramadan would begin on the Thursday, February 19th, not on the Wednesday. And all of the maps show this unequivocally, right? Every single one of them. That it's going to show the maps. All right. So it's the same thing here, right? The yellow is just showing that it's only visible using optical aids. You can't see it without an optical aid, period, let alone anywhere east of it. Do you understand the point? Is it clear? All right?
Just maybe a time for one more question if there is, and then we conclude our talk today.
Are there any questions from the sister side?
Okay. I think we are fine.
Yeah.
Again, we're trying our best, and we're taking the initiative even to present that, to clear the misconceptions and to answer your questions. And we still can have another session that after you look at it and study it, and inshallah will come to a criteria that be inshallah adopted by all. We are in a stage of contacting many organizations, including the Fiqh Council of North America. We're being followed by many masajid and institutions, and if they agree with this idea and this criteria, that actually will bring partial unity until inshallah maybe in the near future we will have all over like one Eid, one Ramadan, and all will be united. Allah put khayr and barakah. We have a great hope, and وما توفيقي إلا بالله. جزاكم الله خيرا. بارك الله فيكم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Yeah, this is all public information. So, I mean, we've just proposed this as the London Council of Imams. No. I mean, like in terms of the criterion that we're using of the possibility of an easily visible naked eye sighting,